Welcome to Equal Ground Headlines. I am Samuel B. Williams, bringing you balanced coverage on our top stories of the day. New York City nigh. From coast to coast, Americans are taking to the streets in a wave of Earth Day protests aimed at confronting what activists call the Trump administration's war on the planet. In the run-up to Earth Day, April 22nd, hundreds of marches, rallies, and community cleanups are unfolding across the United States. Environmental groups have teamed up with social justice and pro-democracy organizations to amplify a unified message. Demand the right to a healthy environment and push back against policies that they say imperil both the climate and American democracy. In New York City, thousands of people converged in Lower Manhattan over the weekend for a demonstration dubbed the Hands Off March. Protesters carried creative signs. One showed an illustration of Trump with the earth in a headlock, captioned, "Hands off our planet," and chanted slogans like, "Climate justice now." This event was jointly organized by climate justice outfits and immigrant rights groups, underscoring a theme of solidarity between movements. Indeed, Saturday's New York rally was branded the Hands Off Migrants and the Planet March. As speakers took the microphone in Foley Square, they highlighted how President Donald Trump's crackdown on migrants and embrace of fossil fuels are intertwined injustices. One organizer proclaimed, "Climate change and forced migration are two sides of the same coin. When you cage children and deregulate pollution, you are sentencing future generations. Enough!" The crowd erupted in cheers. The New York March saw environmentalists and immigrant advocates march shoulder to shoulder. They directed ire at both ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Big Oil. Protesters chanted for ICE to get out of New York and for New York to get out of fossil fuel, tying local climate action, like divesting city pensions from oil companies, to the broader fight against Trump's federal agenda. This joining of forces was intentional. As Nina Lakhani, a climate justice reporter, wrote, organizers are teaming with pro-democracy groups for an all-out on Earth Day mobilization, aiming to demand the right to live free, healthy lives for all. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, a Stop the Cuts march in Milwaukee, Wisconsin drew hundreds more on Monday. Rallying outside the state capitol, activists condemned proposed Republican budget cuts to programs ranging from health care to environmental protection. They highlighted that the Trump administration and its GOP allies have sought deep reductions to agencies like the EPA, Clean Energy Research, and climate funds, even as climate-fueled disasters mount. The Milwaukee protest was organized by Indivisible and other grassroots groups. Marchers held banners reading, "No cuts to our future," and "Fund solutions, not pollution." One young mother spoke about lead in drinking water and the need for federal support to upgrade infrastructure, linking environmental justice to public health. Across the country in California, Earth Day mobilizations have taken on a celebratory yet urgent tone. In Los Angeles, students led a climate march downtown, many of them wearing green face paint and carrying seedlings, a symbol of generational hope. 16-year-old Marisol Jimenez, skipping school with her parents' blessing, said she was marching, "For my future kids, I want them to have a livable planet." In San Francisco, activists staged a theatrical oil spill demonstration, lying on the pavement in black t-shirts outside a Chevron office to protest continued drilling on public lands under the Trump administration. Despite President Trump's past claims of being an environmentalist, his tenure has seen rollbacks of dozens of environmental regulations, from weakening the Clean Water Act protections to opening the Arctic refuge to oil leases. Those policy rollbacks are a key driver of the protests. Trump's environmental legacy is an outright assault on our right to clean air and water, charged Bill McKibben, co-founder of 350.org, at a virtual rally that was live-streamed to multiple events. He cited Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement in his first term, and the administration's continued promotion of coal and oil. Even in his second term, Trump has downplayed climate change, focusing on energy independence and job creation in fossil industries. Activists say that approach is dangerously short-sighted as the planet barrels toward 1.5 degrees C of warming. Notably, March 2025 was the hottest March on record in Europe, and the second hottest globally. Facts that speakers at many rallies mention to underscore the urgency of action. The protests are not just against something, they are for something. Specifically, demonstrators are demanding robust climate action, a rapid transition to renewable energy, green jobs programs, and respect for indigenous rights. Many pipeline fights like Dakota Access and Line 3 involve indigenous land. The Sunrise Movement, a youth-led climate group, organized dozens of volunteers to plant trees and pick up trash as part of Earth Day service events. But with a political edge, participants wore shirts that said, "Green New," and later gathered to call on Congress to pass sweeping climate legislation. Although a Republican-controlled House makes new climate laws unlikely at the moment, activists are keeping the pressure on and looking ahead to future elections. One of the hallmark events of this Earth Day campaign was 2 weeks ago. A Hands Off Our Future national march that brought out millions across various cities. That protest, referenced as the Hands Off mobilization, was a broader coalition effort opposing a range of Trump policies, and it energized many who are now participating in these Earth Day action. Organizers see the climate fight as inseparable from fights for democracy and human rights. They note that since January, 41 anti-protest bills in 22 states have been introduced, many targeting climate and racial justice demonstrations. This crackdown on protest rights itself has become a rallying point. In Denver, environmental advocates carried signs defending the right to protest, such as "Protect the Protectors." It's a response to measures like one in Oklahoma that increased penalties for blocking oil infrastructure, which activists view as attempts to silence them. Throughout Monday, President Trump was the target of sharp criticism at these events, but some local and state officials also came under fire. In Texas, for example, environmental activists in Houston joined forces with community groups fighting pollution in minority neighborhoods. They decried both Trump's EPA, which has been slower on enforcement, and the Texas state government's friendly ties to oil companies. The chants of "hey, hey, ho, ho, pollution and greed have got to go" echoed a common sentiment that corporate interests are being placed above people's health. While the protests were largely peaceful and energetic, there were a few confrontations. In West Virginia, A small group of coal miners counter-protested an Earth Day rally, holding signs like "Coal keeps lights on." Police kept the two groups apart, and rally organizers emphasized that a just transition means helping fossil fuel workers move to new industries. "We're not against workers. We're against corporate fat cats lying to them," one speaker shouted, winning applause from her side. Media coverage of the Earth Day protests has been significant. Major news networks showed split-screen images. President Trump smiling with the Easter Bunny at the White House versus crowds in the streets chanting for climate action. This contrast was not lost on commentators. On MSNBC, an anchor noted, as the president enjoys holiday festivities, a growing number of Americans are calling on him to take the climate crisis seriously. Even some typically political celebrities have chimed in. Actor Leonardo DiCaprio tweeted support for the protesters, and singer Billie Eilish urged fans to attend local climate rallies. The White House responded to the demonstrations through a statement from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. It defended the administration's record, claiming that President Trump has balanced environmental stewardship with economic growth, citing improvements in air quality and investments in tree planting. The statement criticized radical protesters for not acknowledging the administration's efforts, such as the creation of a new national park and funding for coastal restoration. Though activists say these pale in comparison to the damage of deregulation, the response did little to quell protesters' determination. If anything, it gave them fresh talking points about the disconnect between the administration's rhetoric and the scientific reality. As Earth Day itself arrives on Tuesday, more events are planned, including a major rally on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., that is expected to draw tens of thousands. There, youth activists, indigenous leaders, scientists, and even a few Democratic lawmakers are slated to speak in what could be the largest climate gathering in D.C. since the early Trump years. Organizers want to maintain momentum and not let this moment fade. The oceans are rising, and so are the people, is a popular protest cry. And on this Earth Day 2025, it certainly feels like a rising tide of climate consciousness is sweeping the country. For veteran environmentalist Jane Goodall, who at 91 delivered a virtual message to protesters in several cities, this movement is a sign of hope. "I am encouraged to see people everywhere, especially the young, standing up for our beautiful planet," she said. "Together we are strong. Never give up." That sentiment captures the resolve, infusing these Earth Day protests. A refusal to surrender to climate despair, and a belief that collective action can steer the nation and the world toward a more sustainable, just future.